So today we're going to start out with a game. So I want you to pause this and go gather your supplies. You need some cups, like some plastic cups, some beans, and a spoon each. So Mike and I are going to play a game with you. So hopefully you're able to set up like this too. So you put your cups about 10 feet away, as long as your parents are okay with this, that is. And then you take your beans one at a time and you put the beans in the divot of the spoon. And we're going to attempt, I don't think I even got close, to see if any of us can make it in the cup. I'm guessing no, but I'm going to try to get close.
Shoot,
Oh, that was pretty close. So hopefully you're, hopefully you're trying this at home. Ooh, I at least got one near the cup.
Oh,
I got one in! It bounced! It bounced in! Oh, baby. I'm getting good. Well, maybe cocky now, so I know I really missed. So, did your launching skills continue to improve as you kept trying? Hopefully, maybe some of you even got close to one of the cups. I thought it was at least fun to try. Well, today we're going to be talking about one of the ways that God's people, the Israelites, communicated with God and what his response was to how they did that. Believe it or not, launching beans and learning how to talk with God has a little something in common. Not much, but hopefully as you practice, you can get more comfortable and better with both. God's people had been traveling in the desert, eating the manna that God had provided for them, and yet they still complained. Oh, that we had meat to eat! They missed the fish, cucumbers, leeks, onions, and garlic that they used to eat while they were in Egypt. Yeah, that was the good old days. Have you ever heard adults say that? It's a phrase sometimes that people use when they're talking about a time when they were younger that they remember fondly. So, example would be, oh, now I have to make my bed, help pick up the house, exercise till I sweat. But oh, the good old days. When I was a baby, my mom and dad just took care of everything for me. I could just relax. But wait a minute, I did have to wear a diaper. I couldn't walk or talk, and I didn't even have any teeth. Wait a minute, maybe it wasn't so good. How about you guys? Is there some good old days for you? What about the good old days when you used to be able to go to school for school? Well, there were some definitely good things about that. You got to see your friends and play with them in person. That is so important. But you were also away from home. You still had schoolwork to do, and probably had to pack your bag the night before. Probably in the morning had to fix your hair, get that stick up to lay down before you headed off to school. And if you're like my boys, you had to travel 2 hours a day on the bus when you could be home doing schoolwork, getting that done and out of the way, and then having time to relax and play. Well, God's people were looking back to their time in Egypt at this point, while they're in the desert, as the good old days, when they had normal food to eat. Did they forget that they were also slaves in Egypt? Something must have slipped their mind, and they were unable to worship God freely. Did they forget how they cried out to God when they were in that place of their suffering? In Exodus chapter 3, verses 7 through 8, it says, "Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians and bring them out into a land, to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. This was part of God's rescue plan that they were in the middle. He was leading them to something good. But instead of calling out to God, they whined and complained. They complained to Moses because he was kind of almost like in the position of a parent to them, in the sense that he was over caring for the needs of these people. And there wasn't just one or two or three or four or five of them, like might be in your household. There were over 1 million people. How do you think you would feel? Whew, I think I would feel like there was a lot of weight on my shoulders, a lot of responsibility, and they were making it really hard. Because of all their complaining, Moses was ready to quit his job. That's how hard they were making it. In Numbers chapter 11, let's look at verses 18 through 20. The Lord said, "Tell the people, consecrate yourselves, get ready, for tomorrow you're going to eat meat." You've been whining to God. "We want meat. Give us meat. We had a better life in Egypt." God has heard your whining, and he's going to give you meat. You're going to eat meat. And it's not just going to be for a day that you'll eat meat, and not for 2 days or 5 or 10 or 20, but for a whole month. You're going to eat meat until it's coming out your nostrils. You're going to be so sick of meat that you'll throw up at the mere mention of it. And here's why. Because you have rejected God, who is right here among you, whining to his face, "Oh, why did we ever have to leave Egypt?" Moses is struggling, trying to figure out, where is all this meat going to come from? That much meat was beyond his comprehension. To this, God replied, "Is the Lord's hand short? Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not." Remember, God keeps his promises. I'm going to invite Frederick the Fox to join us today.
Ta-da! I'm here!
Ta-da! There you are! Hey, I was wondering, can you think of a bird that starts with the letter Q?
Q? Yikes! Not very many words start with the letter Q.
That's true. So I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with nail.
Quail.
Yeah, but why are you licking your lips?
I like quail.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure your stomach and your mouth do. Wow, I read that they refer to their call as "wet my lips." Listen.
Yep, what's my lips?
Oh, Frederick. Do you want to see a picture of the common quail? Yeah, I thought you would. They are small, short-tailed game birds.
Cool, so you can play games with them?
Well, I'm sure you would, but a game bird is a bird that you hunt for food or for sport.
Tastes like chicken.
Does it? I haven't actually tried it before, but it's probably true. They're the only migratory galliform bird. In other words, they're classified with other fowl-like or chicken-like birds, but they're the only ones that fly from one place to another according to the season. The ones I'm talking about go from northern Europe down to the Sahel Belt in sub-Saharan Africa.
Is the female called a hen like chickens?
Yeah, good guess. They are, and they lay 6 to 12 small, roundish eggs in the spring.
I wouldn't want to sit on eggs and wait for them to hatch.
Yeah, Sounds kind of boring, but it's an important job. Thankfully, with the quail, sometimes the male will help the hen out during that 16 to 18 day period.
A quail gonna be in our Bible lesson today.
You guessed it, quail today. So continuing with the story in Numbers chapter 11, then Moses and the leaders of Israel went back to the camp. A wind set in motion by God swept quails in from the sea. They piled up to a depth of about 3 feet in the camp and as far out as a day's walk in every direction. I can't even imagine that. All that day and night and into the next day, the people were out gathering the quail, huge amounts of quail. Even the slowest person among them gathered at least 60 bushels. They spread them out all over the camp for drying. But while they were still chewing the quail and had hardly swallowed the first bites, God's anger blazed out against the people. He hit them with a terrible plague. God seems sort of upset. Why do you think he was upset with his people? From my perspective, it seems that God wasn't so much upset that they missed having meat or that satisfying feeling that it brought to their stomachs. It was more about that some of them had stopped trusting God and remembering his good heart for them, and that he was in the middle of rescuing them from Egypt and bringing them to a good place. And because of this, they didn't just talk to God about their disappointments, their hopes or desires. They whined and complained. Would you agree that sharing with someone, maybe like your mom or dad, how you're feeling and talking to them, maybe even respectfully making a request, being willing to hear no, and not demanding your own way, wouldn't that be okay maybe to express how you're feeling? Usually, yeah. But how about if you went to your dad and said, give me more video game time? How do you think that might go over? Or what if you had cheese pizza every day for lunch? But you're getting tired of the same old thing every day, and you start whining, I want meat lasagna. Even though your parents are doing the best they can and they're providing for you, you complain, and you start telling other people that your parents don't love you. Would that be true? And how do you think that would make your parents feel? Being around people like that is no fun. God wants us to know this. I hear you. I see your suffering and I care for you. It hurts my heart when I see you hurting. And I am big enough and powerful enough to sustain you. But complaining and whining is not a good way to communicate. I wanted to share something with you that happened to me about a month ago. Well, I enjoy gardening, and I had planted some new seeds that I had bought of spinach, right? Well, I planted and it didn't come up. I planted again, still. I don't know if the bugs or the birds, something ate it, or they're bad seeds even though they were new. At any rate, like 1 or 2 spinach, and I planted a bunch. Very disappointed. But what amazed me was a couple days later, from somebody that would not have known my dilemma, except God, gave us a bunch of huge bags of beautiful, already washed spinach. It was a lot of work to process it all, but I was so excited. It was more spinach than I could have grown in my entire garden. And this is what I sensed in my spirit from that. God knows me, he hears me, and he responds. And he wants to do the same with you. His response doesn't always look like what happened with me with the spinach, but the truth is this. He loves to have us communicate with him, and he loves to communicate his love to us. in lots of different ways. So here's what I want you to do. 2 things this week, okay? Number 1, watch for some of the ways that God wants to communicate his love to you this week. Watch for it. And number 2, I want you to learn and practice obeying our new memory verse. Because communication is good and important, but how we communicate is super important to learn. And it's going to be Philippians 2:14. Do everything without complaining or arguing.